So it's no secret that the world is drowning in petrochemical plastics, with microplastics touching nearly every corner of the planet, contributing to our climate challenges and plenty of other problems as well. So today we're focusing on a women-founded startup working to craft a plastic-free future. Listed on the Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2023, Erthos was founded to radically invent new building blocks of single-use plastics by harnessing the power of nature to offer a truly functional, scalable, and compostable solution to our world. So far, they have taken on 11.2 million in funding, and they're just getting started. There are two female founders, Nuha Siddiqui and Kritika Tyagi. Today, we're speaking with Kritika. Welcome to the Fem Future Society podcast. I could not be more excited to have you here.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to speak with you today and to just dive into this conversation.
Well, so I have a confession to make because I am a little bit of a fangirl. Sustainability has been a part of my world and something that I'm deeply invested in and engaged in, and that I care about very, very much. So I'm just in awe of what you two have accomplished. For a start, is it 26 and 27 years old? Have I got that right? Or you're a year older than that at this point?
So we are both 28, and we're getting at the age where we're probably not going to talk about our age after a while.
Yes, and I totally understand that, right? I mean, at some point, the less extraordinary piece, obviously, is your age, and it's more about what you're actually accomplishing. So I also have been following what you've been doing, I want to say, for about 2 or 3 years, because I was so captured at what a bold vision that you have, which is really literally, and I know we say this a lot figuratively, but is literally game changing. And so I've been witnessing this really rapid ascension in what you're doing and for the global plastics industry. But I do want to start with, because there are two of you and you are co-founders. And so I would love to know how you and Nuha met, and where did this all start?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for all of the kind words. That is incredibly kind of you to have been following us for so long, and again, we're very grateful. I think to really kind of start off, both Nuha and I really met when we co-founded the organization when we were students at the University of Toronto. So I was a student in plant biology. Nuha was studying environmental economics, and we were very passionate, as you can imagine, about the environmental crisis, and in particular the plastic waste crisis. So we kind of really began by having a mutual deep understanding of what the implications of the climate crisis would have on our planet, and recognizing that a lot of it was driven primarily by the adverse effects of plastics. Our mission, or our kind of goal together, was to understand, how do we think about the way we function day to day to really maximize our positive impact, and how do we actually fold that in with innovation. And so initially, when we really began thinking about this problem, we were really focused on packaging and how do we rethink packaging. This was 2016, and we were looking at a lot of e-commerce. People were ordering packages and things online, and you were getting these shipped in where you had more packaging than the goods that you'd purchased. And so we were really interested in looking at the packaging side of things. But as over time, as we
Sorry,
kind
can I ask? I was just going to ask, sorry to interject, but I'm curious, did it start out as a thesis, or were you looking at this from a consumer standpoint, and given what it is that you both studied, and saying, wow, actually there's a problem here that we could solve for? Or was it you intentionally selected that space to, put your focus onto?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great question. So both of us were actually part of an innovation incubator on campus, and that was called Enactus Canada. And so we were really actually invested in the problem space itself and wanted to actually see if we could leverage some of the resources that were provided through EFT entrepreneurship, through Enactus Canada, to be able to figure out how to actually build solutions for this. And so it was a mix of, I wouldn't say exactly a thesis project where it was, pure research, but it was kind of a mix of what was academically available to us and, what we were really interested in and what we thought would be a really high impact space for us to evaluate and kind of dive deeper into.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So you started out like, did you two know each other before, by the way, or did you meet when you were at college?
So I always love telling this story, and I'm glad Nuha's not here because she gets very embarrassed when I tell this story. But I
Right.
had actually watched her pitch in a competition about a year prior to us actually starting Erthos together. And I remember she was pitching a solution very similar. It was again looking at packaging, looking at how we can leverage biomaterials to really replace items in this space. And my friend was actually the one that snuck me into this event. And I remember I turned to her and I was actually tearing up by watching her presentation. I said, how do I get involved with this? How do I get in touch with her? Because for me, it was the perfect intersection of my academic background and my passions and my interests. And so seeing someone be equally as passionate about this and actually going out there and saying, hey, like, I actually want to build a solution for this, and this is what I have in mind. And if you've watched her pitch, she's an incredible speaker, she's an inspirational leader, and I just knew that was someone I wanted to work with. And after that, it was a lot of sending her messages and saying, hey, I saw you pitch. Can we connect? Can we chat? And over time, we realized, we had a lot of common goals, and we really connected over what we really wanted to do. And so that's really where the story started.
No, I love that. That's like those moments of pure synchronicity, being the right moment, the right time, and how, that can change everything.
I agree. I think starting a company requires a lot of luck and a lot of hard work. And I think it was very lucky that I was in that space at that time, and I really got to see her passion for this. And we are where we are today because I ended up attending that event on a whim. And again, I was there exactly as she was pitching.
So, so that's the background. So then how did you, I mean, you talked a little bit about how you arrived at the idea for Erthos, um, but can you share with us more about what it actually is, and then what gave you to such bold confidence that you could do it?
Yeah, I think Erthos has gone through an evolution over the course of its time. Like I mentioned, we started really looking at packaging, but over time, something that we've realized is, it's not the applications that are the problem when you look at the plastic space. A lot of things that we end up, wanting to replace. It's not the application that's the issue. When we think about straws, for instance, there's a great need for straws in the accessibility space. And so it's less so the application that's a problem and more so the actual building blocks, the polymers that lead to the downstream impact, the bioaccumulation that we're seeing from, all of these petrochemical based materials. And so what we decided to do is actually pivot from a packaging based focus to more of looking at these building blocks of plastics, as we call them. And a lot of our research initially, what we call Erthos Lab, was really looking at how we can leverage well-known and not as well-known ingredients, mix them, blend them, chemically modify them in different permutations and different formats to be able to build comprehensive solutions for plastics. and these were called bioresins. So resins are little pieces of plastics in high volumes to actually get melted down, molded into whatever final application you see today. And that's really the space that we were operating in. Few years of actually working on that, what we realized was that it was actually taking a really long time to do traditional research and development. Obviously, traditional R&D, all the way from the inception up to scaling and actually building solutions for partners. That time frame can take anywhere from 2 to 3 years, and that was a really long time. One, as a startup, you obviously want to make sure you're delivering on client projects really quickly, but two, I think from an industry standpoint, the climate change crisis is not waiting for anyone. We need a solution yesterday. And so waiting 2 to 3 years to build a comprehensive solution is really going to be very difficult when you think about it in terms of feasibility and addressing today's problems. And so what I actually started to do was look at all of the good data that we've aggregated over the past couple of years of us actually working in this space and seeing if we can mathematically model out the relationships between all of the ingredients we've leveraged, these different polymers, and seeing how we can actually understand their characteristics, their behavior in different environments. And so now, where we stand today at Erthos, we're actually a climate technology company where all of the formulations that we build, all of the solutions that we provide to partners are tech driven. And what I mean by that is we have an AI machine learning platform internally. It's called Zaya. And Zaya leverages proprietary machine learning algorithms. And what it does is it allows us to drive insights on proximate formulations that we can leverage for specific client projects. And in our Erthos lab, what we can do is actually take these formulations, refine them, validate and scale them, and provide them to partners. And we've seen a 5-fold increase in time frame or rather, I should say, reduction in time frame, where instead of us taking 2 years, we're now taking 3 to 6 months to provide solutions to clients. And that's really where we sit today. And I think it's really exciting for us because we're able to now match the pace of industry. We're able to match the pace of really what solutions need to be at in order to adequately address the pace of climate change itself.
Which to me is absolutely mind-blowing that you can work that quickly. And I have watched the pivot actually, which I found really fascinating, was that you really started out wanting to address the packaging industry by creating something that went from a material to then creating this AI driven lab that can offer proprietary and bespoke / custom solutions to anybody that comes to you. And that was one of the questions I had. Like, I was curious the role of technology and AI in what it is that you've been able to accomplish, because the speed and scale at which you are able to do what you do, and the fact that you've changed really from, like, the fact that you have this studio and this lab and this proprietary process means that now you can offer those solutions to any number of clients anywhere in the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I think you've captured it perfectly. I think being tech driven has allowed us a lot more flexibility as well in terms of what kind of solutions we can work on. We now have a database of hundreds of ingredients, and that means that if you're building a solution for, a North American facility, and now you need us to build a solution for a facility in Asia, we don't have to leverage the same byproducts that we might be looking at in North America. If a type of starch that we're looking at in North America is not bioavailable in Asia, the platform allows us to actually replace that very quickly, model it out for clients. And in that sense, it's really unique in being able to build geographically valid formulations for some of our global partners. And then making sure that obviously we're not spending a lot of GHG emissions in shipping something across the world just because it's a solution that works. We can make that solution work uniquely in whatever geography our clients are located in. And so there's really different ways we're able to leverage this technology to be more climate conscious and be able to really support our clients in hitting some of their CSR goals that they might have.
And you do that all from being US based, right? This does not require teams of people traveling to various, different parts of the world, nor for you to have offices or labs in different places all around the world. I mean, it's such an efficient system.
Yeah, exactly. So we get to be, a proudly Canadian company located right here in Mississauga and get to touch every single organization globally. And again, I think that's one of the beauties of leveraging a model like ours.
Well, when I was thinking about what it is that you do, and I was looking around through the studio, it really, I'm going to say it came to mind, but Google's DeepMind AI, that it has used AlphaFold to identify and categorize more than 200 million proteins at this point, and the recent discovery of 2.2 million new crystal structures. And that's equivalent to nearly 800 years worth of knowledge
Yeah.
that we've been able to, through AI, identify in the space of a couple of years. So from that has emerged about, this is at latest count, about 380,000 crystal structures that are stable enough to build new materials with. So we're sitting on the cutting edge of material science and what is going to be possible in the future.
I agree. I think
Creating substances and materials that don't exist now, that we can't even in some ways imagine we might have access to in the future.
you're talking about one of the topics I'm so passionate about. I absolutely agree. I think there is so much good to leveraging technologies like AI in really pushing the boundaries of innovation. Something that we've noticed is, the more we leverage our platform, the faster we're generating data sets that allow us to then build on our hypotheses, to validate or reject hypotheses, to then continue innovating further, faster. And this really is exciting because we can think of this application across different industries outside of just material science. And being able to turn, what used to be a very traditional manufacturing based industry into now something that's exciting, that people really want to look into and invest in, that is doing good for the planet. I think there can be no better solution. So we're very excited about our current approach, and we really think there's a lot more that Zaya can do that we'd love to continue exploring.
So tell me more about that then, because there are a couple of questions I have for you in there. One is, so what other spaces do you see that you can apply this to? Because that's really exciting. And the other is, you just said that, because one of the questions I had was I wanted to talk about your client base and the whole investment piece of it, and the enthusiasm that you're finding as you talk more about what it is that you are able to do. The level of excitement that creates in others, even traditional big companies like Anheuser-Busch. Did I actually even pronounce that right? Like, I don't know um, if I got the pronunciation of that right, but
Yeah.
yes.
So
So
you're right. We
there's
did
two
do.
things to unpack there. And that was kind of unfair to land them both on you, because they're big questions.
No, I think they kind of really speak to each other. So what we've discovered with Zaya is that, primarily we were building biocomposites, bioresins for more application-based projects initially before Zaya. And so this would be, in the rigid space, in the film space. And now with Zaya, what we're looking at is actually expanding beyond that. We can build barriers, we can build coatings onto, paper-based substrates or different substrates that clients are looking for. And a lot of times what you find is sometimes folks will have solutions that are more paper-based, but they need to use a petroleum-based coating on it to make sure that it it still functions. And when it goes into recycling or it goes into a compost facility, in neither stream is it actually addressable. And so now you have plastic coated paper living in a landfill. And so we're really excited about leveraging Zaya for solutions like these because now you're able to repulp this paper if you put it through a recycling stream because it's coated on a bio-derived material or it's compostable based on current standards and regulations. And so it's niche areas like those where we're seeing a lot of excitement and growth from clients. But when we think about just overall industry as a whole, right now we're more focused on, plastic alternatives within material science, within packaging, or, within fashion or personal care goods. But high level, the way we've built Zaya is to actually look at polymer structures and polymer characteristics fundamentally. And so in that sense, if we were to start leveraging data from, skincare brands, for instance, we could really leverage those insights to be able to understand how we can build formulations within skincare, within the beauty space, to make them a lot, quote unquote, cleaner, to make them a lot more sustainable. And so there really are no limitations to Zaya. I think if you ask my team, I always say, our biggest limitation is data. And if we have the right data, we can really expand this platform to so many different industries. And we've always kind of kept that thinking as we look at how we model, how we build, and how we explore different spaces.
That is just mind-blowing. Like, I would never have included the beauty industry or skincare in amongst the potential of Zaya. And that was actually one of the questions I had too, was because, part of the problem, I think, from a sustainable standpoint, when it comes to bioplastics and biomaterials, is that we've never really reached a point before where you can truly say that something is biodegradable. It typically has taken big industrial, municipal compost facilities to break down some of these bioplastics, and to your point, covered in petrochemicals anyway. So it just defeats the purpose of trying to create progressions in this industry. So I think that's one of the things that's truly revolutionary about this. And you kind of answered the question actually that I had for you too around, biomaterials as alternatives to traditional plastics represent at the moment less than around 0.5%, so less than 1% of the over 400 million tons of plastic that are produced annually. So from what I'm hearing is that you guys intend to dramatically impact that number and that figure. So in 5 years or 10 years, how do you see this being different?
Yeah, I think you've touched on a really good point. We are an organization that's driven quite a bit by flipping the statistics. Early on in our days, now this is a very common stat that's quoted quite a bit, but we were really driven by, the stat that says by 2050 there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean, and that's why we focused on plastic and packaging at the very beginning of our journey. And similar to what you're saying, when we found out that there is so much potential to leveraging biomaterials, there's so many different biomaterials that can be used in so many different ways to really replace plastics, and it makes up just such a small, minuscule piece of the space. I think that really kind of motivated us to say, why shouldn't we, try to change that statistic? What is really stopping us from actually going out there and saying, hey, we need you to try this material? And that's really a lot of what we do. Actually, we work with quite a bit of our clients. We work with our end users, which happen to be manufacturers. We work with composters, we work with recyclers, and our goal is to understand what is limiting you from adopting biomaterials, what is limiting you from leveraging biomaterials to address the problems that you're facing. And that's how we build our actual design principles internally. And so understanding, in existing municipal compost facilities, why can't operators address existing compostable plastics? What is the gap there? Working with our manufacturers to understand, okay, it's actually compatibility issues. A lot of biomaterials don't actually fit into existing plastic manufacturing lines. And they may not actually be able to use a biomaterial unless they have to retool or re-equip their existing equipment lines. And that causes a lot of challenges for them. And so having a lot of this understanding has also allowed us to then think about how we're designing these solutions for our clients, who may be brands, who may be, CPGs, who aren't on the manufacturing side of things. And from our end, we know that we're building these comprehensive solutions that will be addressed later down the line. And so we have some pretty robust sustainability and compliance protocols internally, and we're always going out to see, whom we can connect with in the value chain to really build our understanding of what solutions we're putting out into the planet, because unless they're being addressed in the way they're meant to be, it ends up falling in the same bucket as existing petrochemical traditional plastics, and we really don't want to do that. So
Right.
we try to have all of the right conversations, making sure again that we can be as comprehensive as possible.
Yeah, I mean, from what I just heard you say, you're really considering the entire life cycle analysis of from inception to disintegration or like dissolution of the end product. And along the way, you've managed to, I mean, it's probably a much bigger conversation to talk about, because I'm naturally curious about these things, to talk about, well, how did that happen and why did that happen? And like, what were some of the barriers that you came up against? But I mean, you've done the work to really figure out, all the way through the process of the product process, where there are barriers to entry, and then how you're going to mitigate those, and to come up with a solution that pleases, it kind of pleases everybody. I mean, how often does that happen? Almost never.
Yeah. It is a big undertaking, I will say, but I think it's something we're very passionate about. It's, the initial goal that we really started off with. And I think it's the right approach to flipping that statistic, that 0.5%, because if we don't take the charge on actually thinking about why biomaterials are not being adopted, if we don't ask that question, then there's less incentive downstream for people to actually do that adoption and work with us. And so it's really a multifold answer, but again, I
Sure.
think it is a really, really core piece of what we do and how we build.
Well, and so now, as a result of that, you have some pretty massive clients on board. I spoke about one earlier, which is Anheuser-Busch, and other consumer packaging goods companies. And was securing a client like that a major turning point for you guys? Like, how did you win their business? Did you have to convince them? And did you find them willing to embrace change once they realize that this is actually possible? And do you find that in general that, everybody wants the better solution, because we're all humans living on this planet? It's just, they just never had the right solution, which is why companies are not making the change.
Yeah, I think you're very on the mark there. I think a lot of our partners generally have been very interested in understanding, what sustainability even means. And that's a journey we've been on with some of our clients that we're now onboarding for, quite some time. And so everyone that we're working with now, we've been in contact with them, in conversations with them for some time, and they followed Erthos's journey till where now they're being onboarded as one of our clients. Something I think I'll say in terms of challenges is there is a lack of harmony in regulations globally. And when you work with global CPGs at the size that we really want to work with, there's always a disconnect in terms of they don't understand if in North America there's a certain stipulation on what is recyclable versus what is compostable, and in Europe there's a completely different definition for the two. And so when we talk about, the process of actually coming to work with these clients, a lot of that actually is centered in clearing some of that misinformation, helping them understand what truly sustainable solutions mean, helping them understand, what they might require from us when it comes to reporting on how we classify a solution as sustainable. And so, for instance, doing complete life cycle analysis reports and working with clients on, what do you think is a sustainable metric versus what is the industry saying. And I think there's a lot of benchmarking, a lot of educational piece centered there. But I think generally a lot of the clients that we work with, they're very interested in integrating sustainable solutions. They really want to explore how they can integrate sustainability truly into their supply chains. I think a lot of that work is really helping them understand what that sustainable kind of definition actually means and how they can really fit that into their current offering.
So do you, as you are thinking about this, does the term regenerative come up for you? Like, are you thinking beyond sustainable and into, because I was thinking, wow, you could really go down a rabbit hole with this in some ways, because this is where my brain goes. I was like, God, eventually, like, it's global plastics industry domination, and then it's all about a world without petrochemical plastics, and then a world without plastics, and then do you actually build in your own obsolescence because we don't actually even need packaging solutions anymore? I mean, the sky is the limit in terms of how we can think about it. So do you and Nuha, I mean, I know that you're very much in the present and the here and now, and building what are very tactical and pragmatic packaging solutions, global solutions. So, but do you think about that? Like, can you imagine a world where you just, plastic doesn't even exist?
I mean, I think that would be the ideal future for both of us. I think in some spaces, when you're thinking about the reusable space, there's definitely the need for different materials. I don't know if that is a plastic or, that includes things like aluminum, which are infinitely recyclable. But I think for both of us, ideally, there exists a world where we don't need to rely on plastics anymore. Regenerative materials is actually something that's very close to our hearts, which is why both of us have such a strong focus on biomaterials. Because our goal is, if something is coming from the earth, ultimately it goes back into it. And so we're looking at what we think is a truly circular economy, because there's really no accumulation, there's no persistence of materials within our environment. If we're building recyclable materials, we're building them with ingredients that don't actually leach out microplastics. If we're building compostable materials, they're actually fully going into the soil, they're breaking down into biomass, into water. And so regeneration is definitely something we think about. I love that you brought it up because it is a topic that's very close to our heart. And again, ideally, we see a future where we don't have to rely on plastics for, especially our everyday items.
That is so extra. I love that you're even thinking about that. Like, I love that that is something that is on your radar as well. I mean, there's just so much authenticity in your story that I find myself, I really lean into. It gives me so much hope. So I do, I think about materials like graphene, for example. I mean, that's an entirely new material that is human developed through scientific breakthroughs, and has is it 400 times the strength of steel? And so I'm like, why is that not more widely? And I know we're, bioplastics, you're not the steel industry, but I'm curious if you have a point of view on that. Like, why has that not scaled in the same way that you intend with what you're doing in the plastics industry? Because that just feels like a no-brainer to me as well.
Yeah, I think I'm not as well versed in speaking on graphene in particular, just because we haven't really leveraged it as much. But I think that is a material that we have explored for our materials database. And the only reason we haven't leveraged it to date is because small amounts of graphene can actually dye your material a specific color. And when your ingredients go through a MRF, a material recovery facility, sometimes they actually use a technology that needs to um, it's a near technology, it's infrared, and so sometimes it actually needs to read the signature of what the material is to code whether it's polypropylene, polystyrene, biomaterials. And so that's why pure black plastics, for instance, don't get recycled because they don't get picked up. And similarly, if we were to use, a pure graphene material and it gets colored, our clients are typically not very comfortable with it, and so we just haven't been able to leverage it. Beyond that, I'm not very sure I can actually say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, it was an unfair question in a way, but I am just curious, what, like, why some of the material sciences breakthroughs that we've had are not more widely adopted at this point in time. We have the technology and we have the materials. So I think that's one of the things that's really encouraging about what you guys have done is you've really thought about this and it's genuinely scalable and there are companies that want to use it. Do you have anyone else? I mean, I know this is probably confidential, but I'll ask the question anyway, and you can decline to answer. Like other big companies that really want to partner with you on some of this?
So we might actually have something coming out soon, so I actually can't speak to that yet.
Okay.
But we are hoping to do some campaigns in the future with some of our clients. We're very excited about it. But Danielle, our head of marketing and comms, has been very clear that we have to be very secretive about it until we can do it. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, can't speak to it yet. But I would ask you guys to follow Erthos's comms to
For
see when
sure.
we launch that.
Yeah, yeah, love that. I mean, I can imagine a world in which you become part of the story, like part of the story that is why people choosing products specifically because they contain your materials. I think there's extraordinary potential there from a brand standpoint.
Yeah, I think if we can inspire, even one major brand or organization to rethink the way they're actually looking at their sustainable solutions and start to think more biomaterials, we feel like we've done our part. And so if we get to be a part of that story, it would just be kind of a really great success in terms of what we set out to do. And like I said, both Nuha and I are such champions of biomaterials. We both believe in them so deeply. We think there is such an untapped potential. Like I said, we have a database of hundreds of ingredients, and we're still constantly going out to see what else we can try to leverage, what else we can bring to the forefront, because there is just so much that from the planet we can actually leverage to address some of our everyday needs. And so if we get to be a part of that story, I think that would just be incredible.
I know, I do too. Do you think about some of or is it even now? I don't know. As a part of what you guys do that I haven't really dived into the open source piece of it. Like at some point, do you imagine this just becoming something that everybody can use and adopt, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think we definitely want to look at different ways we can partner with people who traditionally would have been our competitors. And so the avenue of doing it, I think we're open to what that might look like, but definitely we want to figure out a way where we can empower some other biomaterials companies to again kind of look at the way they're developing their solutions, and see if there's any avenues for partnership there to help them build, scale, and get to kind of a point. I think, like you said, there's only 0.5% of biomaterials right now. There is such a massive market and room for all of us to play in.
Right.
And so we're always looking at, how we can partner and help uplift some of our peers in this space and make sure that we all can address this issue collectively.
Oh, so beautiful. So I'm going to ask, what are some of the hardest decisions that you've ever faced, both individually and as a company? And where have you found the most joy?
That is a really great question. Um, I think there have been, as always with running a startup, there have always been difficult decisions. initially when we first started, we were having conversations with manufacturers on the ground to understand, why does packaging not work? Why are you guys not leveraging biomaterials for packaging? And then being a company that was pre-seed and deciding to do a full pivot because we knew that doing solely packaging did not make sense was a risky decision. And then to go back and redo a pivot right before our Series A to say, you know what, we really believe that technology is going to be a cornerstone of how we actually interface with clients. They were incredibly difficult decisions because we believed in them, but at the same time, we wanted to make sure that others saw what we saw in these solutions. And we knew that it was the right strategy to really enforce our ideals in terms of, biomaterials are the right solution forward, and make sure that we're addressing client problems effectively. And so they were extremely difficult decisions to make because you're effectively going out and telling your company, hey, we're changing things up. We're now going to do AI solutions along with R&D. But I think when you see your team's response to things like this, that is also where some of your biggest joy comes in. We have the most incredible team. I cannot say enough great things about them. We are very lucky to work with some of the greatest material scientists in our space. We have a great team of data scientists, computational scientists on our team. And everybody is so invested in the mission that every time we come out and we say, we think that this is the right solution moving forward, and seeing the team get really energized and behind the decision and work day and night to really kind of help us validate that on an industry level. Nuha and I can never do this alone. And I think that greatest joy comes from working with our team and collaborating with them and knowing that we are a singular unit, all working towards that same goal. And so I think it's kind of the same. It is the most difficult thing, but it is also the greatest joy knowing that they believe in us and we have made such a great unit at Erthos.
Yeah, see, I mean, that's amazing. And that right there, I mean, that elevates what you're doing beyond just being a kind of a, not just anything, but a materials science company in a way I mean, I get the enthusiasm about what it is that you're doing, but there has to be something about you and Nuha as a company, as people, sorry, not as a company, as people, that everybody that brings so much happiness and contentment and satisfaction in being a part of your team. And I've looked at everybody on your team, and you're clearly hiring with a very, very conscious diversity lens. But there's also got to be a real sense of, I don't know if pride is the right word, but being a part of something that is literally changing the world.
I should hope so. I think that is very kind. I think I think the reason why our team is as motivated as they are is because everyone is just as invested in the mission as we are.
Yeah.
And I have to say, every company goes through ups and downs, but we stick together during every single moment. And like I said, it feels like we're one unit. We're all working towards the same thing. And so I think really it's the unit together. The parts make the whole, so to speak. And so I think everybody is an equal player in keeping the company going and hitting the success metrics that we have and getting the results that we have so far.
Yeah. Wow. Who is your head of HR? I'm kidding. Because they've made some really good hires. I'm not sure I know of any other company that can boast that every single person on the team is just a really, happy player who's so invested and takes so much pride in what they're contributing and what they're doing and being a part of
Yeah.
such an extraordinary team. That's really amazing.
Yeah. Like I said, luck and a lot of hard work. And we got very lucky in having such an incredible team.
I don't know. I think luck is synchronicity. I don't think it's just random. I think there's something about, how we're all brought together and in these moments in time to really, to create something. And so, yeah, I don't know about luck. So let's end on this then. I would love to know what gives you both hope. in terms of what the future can look like. And that's why it's kind of a full circle on how you started, because you were hopeful, you had an idea, you had a vision that things could be very different. So now you're here, and what's next and what brings you hope?
Yeah. I think in terms of what's next, we really want to, work with clients who are actually really interested in sustainability and um, help them understand how technology can be integral in helping them hitting their targets. We have so much in store in terms of what Zaya can do, and we're constantly revolutionizing internally. We have so many proprietary ingredients that we've created in-house with and without Zaya over the past few years of research that we've done. And I think that in part also gives us hope because we are seeing a really great interest in our new studio model where people really do want to work with us, and partners are coming together with us to help troubleshoot what applications in their supply chain we can actually replace with biomaterials. And seeing the general excitement that we're seeing within our pipeline right now, I think it gives us hope that people are really interested in biosolutions. I think they were just looking at what's the best avenue and actually applying them.
Yeah.
And we hope to kind of see that replicate over the course of the few years. And I think even just looking at our peers in the space, other biomaterials companies, there is so much incredible innovation that's happening today. And I think if we start to look at, actually supporting solutions like these, there is so much hope for growth, and actually, again, changing that statistic of 0.5% and making sure that collectively we can actually work together in tackling the plastic solutions together.
Yeah. Oh, amen to that. And that just actually, I have one, just for my own curiosity, one last question, which is around the process and the the emissions or the waste streams for what it is that you're doing. So there almost are none, because even the waste product is something that is biodegradable.
Yeah, so we are very cognizant of our full life cycle assessment. And so all the way from, the very inception of how our ingredients are made all the way to the end of their life, we try to be very careful in terms of what it is that we're selecting. And even, beyond emissions, something that we look at is this particular crop potentially that we're leveraging a food source? Does it compete with human consumption? If it's a secondary material, could us leveraging it in high volumes impact land use in there in that region? And so there's really a lot of different assessment that we do before we integrate materials into our database, but also in terms of looking at our solution holistically and making sure that it is compatible. And if we're looking at building something that's not compostable but rather recyclable, then seeing what are the recycling requirements within the jurisdiction where it's going to be implemented. And does it actually comply? And how do we make sure that it's actually going to be recycled? And similarly with composting, we work with major certifiers to make sure that we have the right certifications before this material goes out. So any claim that we make, a third party has vetted and validated it, so that again, it's not just us saying, hey, this is a good material. There's kind of that stamp of approval. And so there is kind of a very rigorous internal process to make sure that as much as we can, we're reducing our impact and having all of the rights checks and balances along the way.
Oh my God. Well, I have to say that I am just like, I'm a massive, massive champion for what it is that erthos are doing. And I think it's such a testament to you and Nuha that you just had enough faith and confidence and vision that you've actually been able to carry this off, that you've actually been able to do this. And I'm so excited to see how this changes everything. I mean, the use case scenarios are so endless. I mean, they're really almost infinite if you think about it, particularly as new materials are discovered. So I can't wait to see where you girls go and what happens next.
No, thank you so much. We're very excited about the future of Erthos, and I think we're just really happy to be having these conversations as well, and kind of getting that message out there. And I think the way our partnerships are going, and the way we're kind of looking at the future of biomaterials, we're really hopeful for this space.
Yes. Well, and on that note, I so appreciate you joining us today. Thank you for sharing your story, your incredible story. Um, and take care. Like, I'll be watching. I'll be watching to see
Thank
what
you so much,
happens
Emma.
next. All right. Well, it was great to meet you.
Likewise, thank you so much for the opportunity, and I loved having a conversation. And if you ever want to talk sustainability, I love that topic, so I'm happy to connect whenever.
You are on. Awesome. All right. Well, take care. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All
Take
right.
care. Bye.